เอาละค่ะช่วงนี้พร้อมแล้วนะคะที่เราจะได้พบกับมิสเตอร์วิลเลมมาเล็กนะคะ Executive Academic Director Innovation Center Delivery Lead ของ SEAC ค่ะ May I invite Mr. William Malik on the stage ขอเสียงปรบมือต้อนรับด้วยนะคะ
สวัสดีครับสบายดีไหม Good. That's all the Thai I know. So we're in trouble. So I'll try to speak slower, but welcome. My topic today is about design thinking. But before I start, I'd like to do a quick survey. So you have to raise your hand when I ask you the question, okay? So the first one is, how many of you are in a VC or privately funded startup right now? Please raise your hand if you meet this criteria. Okay, about 5%. How many of you are VCs? Raise your hand. Another 5%. How many of you are educators of any type in innovation? A little bit long. How many of you work for businesses? Any business? Okay, I get it. All right, good. So it's always good to check in. Now, the next question is, how many of you have ever worked on a design thinking project? Please raise your hand. If you've worked on a design thinking project, wow, fantastic. So there's about a third of you. I'm assuming the rest of you have either heard about it and are here to contemplate what this means. So we're in great shape. We're going to ask the experts who have been executing this as we go along the way. A couple quick things about myself. I have two legacies. One took 8 years, 80 hours a week, working at Stanford to build one of the most disruptive executive education programs in Stanford's in the last 20 years. It took me 8 years. You got that? 80 hours a week. This took me 3 seconds. My 3-year-old daughter, right? So the difference in execution is really different, but nevertheless, these are the things that I'll be leaving behind and talk to you. But what was very interesting as I got going, in about the year 2000 at Stanford, the video TV show, ABC Nightline, aired nationally the video, or essentially a docudrama, about IDEO. It was about how IDEO used this process to reinvent the shopping cart. And to say the least, I was profoundly impacted by this. I'm watching this in a hotel room going, I've got to put this into the Stanford curriculum because this is a Stanford professor, Dave Kelly was in the show, and I know how to take this process and put it into a project planning orientation. So I have essentially been working with design thinking in its early form for 18 years. It never got the name until about 2007 when Hasso-Plattner gave Stanford $35 million and said, figure it out, we're going to build a design school around this thing called design thinking. The roots of this actually started at Stanford in a mechanical engineering course called visual thinking, primarily focused on product design, which Dave Kelly, Robert McKim, and some others were involved with in terms of teaching engineering students how to see and develop and design products. Now, before I get started on this, I want to I'm going to step back for a moment, and let's think about the context that we're in right now. In a minute, I'm going to click this button, and what it's going to show, you're going to see text up on the video, and it's going to simulate for you in real time by showing you how fast a lake, and this happens to be Lake, I think, Michigan, would fill up at the rate of current technology in terms of the speed, right? So what we do know that's coming quickly, and it's here now, is quantum computing. It will literally increase the speed of computation by a magnitude or more. So let's just watch this, and I want to get you just a sense the world that we're living in and how fast it's moving. So pay attention to the text. It's going to simulate the lake filling up in real time according to the speed of computing capacity to match the human brain. Okay, let us see what it looks like. So hopefully you can really attempt to kinesthetically understand. We are living at the rate of exponential change. It's no longer a linear pattern, which means there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of the rate of change that's actually upon us and will continue to accelerate. Why is this important? Because business success, society success, will fundamentally be based on how fast you can move, how fast you can keep up with the competition, how fast you can reinvent, how fast you can innovate. So this is a core premise in my conversation today with you about design thinking. My assertion is if you really understand the basis of design thinking and the 7 keys and the 7 steps, you will understand how to quickly be able to move and act on opportunities or challenges as you encounter them in your business world or your private world as a startup. So this is Dave Kelly. What's happened in the last 10 years since the D School was formed and they formalized the word design thinking, there are at least 27 different derivatives of design thinking frameworks in the world. 27. Now, in the academic world, what we say is when somebody imitates you, that's the highest form of flattery. This is a good thing. And it's now very pervasive. Organizations are no longer using design thinking simply for product design. They're actually using it to solve immediate, known problems and challenges. It is not just for the product or service design orientation, which it emerged from originally. Now, the basic of design thinking is really quite simple. It really says, we want to start with people. We want to start with solving the people problems. And I'm going to show you some examples today of what that looks like and what it feels like in real terms. The notion is that technology people love to start with technology, and they start here and they try to move up to the people, what we call a force fit. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So the notion is if we actually begin to empathize with the people that have the problem, the organizations that have the problems, if we can truly understand that problem set, we can actually create better and more effective products and solutions in the marketplace. So there's some characteristics of design thinking. Anyone can do it. This is not product designers. I can teach an executive assistant how to do design thinking and participate in a team fairly quickly. It can be applied to all processes and industries. It involves methods that enable empathy with people, listening deeply to their needs, wants, motivations. It takes a balanced approach to defining a problem actively as finding the solution. And you'll see this in a minute as I demonstrate what that looks like. It explores solutions. It is collaborative and requires iterative prototyping. And finally, you can solve all kinds of problems with this. And this is one reason many organizations, is anybody from IBM here? IBM, they're training 80,000 people. They're hiring 5,000 design thinking facilitators, and it's not just for product design. They're doing it every element of their business, of their DNA, to change and be able to keep up with the disruption that they are actually creating themselves through quantum computing and other things that they're involved with. What it is not just for creative people. In fact, I can show you what people that think they're not creative can actually get creative very quickly by following the process and the rules of engagement. It's not just for product and service, I said. It's not just a brainstorming session, and it's not just a one-day thing. I really start to chuckle when people tell me, oh, we're doing a one-day hackathon and we'll have the solutions out. For those of you who've been in startup, you know that that is not true. It's the outlier in the data. If you can come up in one day, you can get a lot of ideas, it's great. But when we move through executing an idea, then the game changes. Because I usually say, a great idea not executed is worth absolutely zero in business. So we'll look at this in a minute. It's not a process that replaces analytical problem solving. There still is a role for deep analytical scientific approach to solving specific problems. So let me be very clear. If I'm redesigning a gas turbine engine, I'm not going to use design thinking. I'm going to use engineering, science, and physics to figure out how to make a better engine, right? I'm not going to go ask, the ground crew, what do you think we should do with the blades and the rotor speed, et cetera? And the last one is, this is important, it's not a magic pill. It's not. In fact, by definition, if you accept that new product launches, and I'll show you what the rate of success and failure is in the venture capital world, it's a process to learn, and learn deeply and learn fastly. So a couple things I just want to also highlight. First of all, as I said, it's a learning process. If you understand failure as a learning process, you will embrace this because I learn quicker. And if we're back to that speed issue, if we understand how fast things are changing, the thing that every one of us must be doing now is learning faster. I have come to my own personal realization I've got to keep up 10 times faster than I did 20 years ago. Teaching at Stanford, even trying to keep up in very leading research areas. Now what's interesting, the World Economic Forum has cited these 7 things that by 2020, most people need to begin to embrace as a core skill. Core, not optional. That if you want to hire high productive employees, those 7 areas are what is suggested as being core. Now, what's very powerful is that they happen to be the core skills of design thinking. So if you want to get a jump on the rate of learning and learning faster, I offer to you, by getting engaged with the design thinking project, you can actually get in front of the curve on learning simply because we know it's the skills that you're going to be required as we move forward in the future. More robots, more automation, et cetera. And just to prove the point that this is not like theoretical imagination thing, this is a report from the Design Management Institute. It's tracking companies with specific criteria who have embedded design thinking into the core of their businesses, measured by executive support, design thinking, innovation labs that have absorbed it, and they're tracking their progress from year to year, and they're seeing significant, dramatic performance over companies that are not doing it. So it's no longer a question of does this work? The question is how do you adapt it? How do you adapt it inside your organization? And just to prove my point, this is a couple months ago. This is IBM's report done by Forrester where they tracked their design thinking projects for a specific period of time, and 2 times faster to market, 75% reduced time, and 33% reduced development time. That's money, that's ROI. That's significant when you talk about business world and competition and so forth. As I said before, you can apply it in more ways than one, and that's why it's a good thing to learn, because it's not just about product design. Now, here are the 7 steps. I'm going to go through fast. And by the way, you don't have to take photos of it all, because at the end, I'm going to give you a chance to take a photo of a QR code, and you can go download the whole thing, all right? You with me? Okay. So I'm getting blinded by all the, like a rock star, no, but I know what you're doing, so it's okay, all right? So you'll get it, trust me. Number 2, empathize and let go. 3, define and reframe. Ideate and create. 5 is prototype and test. 6 is iterate and learn. And 7 is you have to have a business case, and then you get to build it, okay? I'm going to go through each one of these and give you my personal opinion about where you might want to focus, having been involved with this for many years in the context of design thinking. The first one, and this, by the way, was learned 4, 5, 6 years after the design thinking model was actually introduced in the D School. Bill Burnett, in particular, was one of the co-founders, said, gosh, we're having a lot of failures. Design thinking isn't working here, there, and everything. And when they did root cause analysis and they went back, they said, you know what? We're not framing the problem right in the beginning. We're solving problems that nobody wants to get fixed. And so what he said is we got to put something in front of the design thinking process, and they called it understand. And it's about, do you really understand the problem or opportunity? I'm going to give you some examples of this. Now, one of the things that I teach is that a leader In an effective professional, if you learn how to ask questions, you are going to have significant creative power and influence in what you do. I'll give you an example. So here's the first question. What is 5 plus 5? Right? Pretty easy, right? Sip. Ding, right? 10, okay? Now, I'm going to reframe the question slightly to provoke a creative response. You ready? Okay, here we go. Different question, different approach. What is? What's the answer? Infinite possibilities. Infinite. A simple reframing of a question can change your life. It can change your products, your services, your ability to succeed in innovation. So you really need to understand the power of questions, focusing on the questions, not on direction and answers. And this is very true in the beginning of design thinking. Now, how many of you have seen this before, right? You know, when Bill Gates came here, I think it was, 2010? First of all, he made a mistake. He thought these were power lines, right? These are telecom cables. And it hasn't got, it's worse now. They keep growing this thing. The question I'm asking you, do we need to disrupt this in Thailand? You know, when I first came here, I'm thinking, gosh, they are like 30 years behind. Because you don't see this in the United States. I mean, it's invisible. It's in the ground, pretty much, okay? But after 10 years, I started to think, you know, this is, when you talk about speed and the need to be adaptable, I see a company hanging a new wire every other day, and it's fast. And they're getting customer served faster than if they had to lay in the ground, get all the things done, etc. You get me? And they can see where the break is, by the way, when it happens. There are many reasons we have to be careful about the things we see and the questions we ask. And of course, Gates took his Facebook post down because he looked like an idiot for doing, this is a power cable. No, these are telecom cables. Now they're hanging off a power cable, but this is just an example of observing things to really ponder what are the right questions that we should be asking about opportunities and challenges that we see. And our famous Peter Drucker, who's considered the foremost management guru of all time, he said the serious mistakes is really asking the wrong question. Leaders need to make sure that they're asking effective questions in terms of what they're doing. Now, I would stand up here 10 years ago, and by the way, 10 years ago, I was actually on this stage doing a book promo for my book, sponsored by the American Chamber of Commerce and Harvard University, on this stage to talk about my book. But today, I'm telling you, the book you want to buy is right here. A More Beautiful Question. It talks about the social science and psychology of innovation with respect to questions. It's a powerful book. Of all the books I would read, and I've got hundreds and, you know, I've got a stack, this is the one you want to pay attention to. It actually will help you understand the nature of asking questions and so forth. One of the things in the phase of creativity is you have to let go of the things you believe are true so you can step back and get into the shoes of the person or people or organization and experience the world from an unbiased perspective. This is easier said than done. Easier said than done. You have to let go of the need of the solution. They say in design thinking, fall in love with the problem, not your solution. You will have much better chance of success if you fall in love with the problem and not the solution. And again, by asking the questions at the right time, you will provoke a greater sense of creativity and so forth. And this one I've learned back from MIT days with Peter Senge in systems thinking. He says, asking the right question at the right time is the central act of transformation and innovation. If you pose to a group at exactly the right time, the explosive power of creative thinking becomes incredibly open, freeing, joyous, because the mind is working at an entirely different level in terms of solving problems. Now, have you ever heard of the mom test? All right, so this is another book, but I'm going to give you the essence of this book, okay? So you all owe me 400 baht on the way out, okay? If you're going to go talk to people, you really want to make sure you understand how to actually go out and talk. Now, before I do that, the problem of not talking to people is this. There's an intention of design, but because you didn't talk to the person, the real use of your product becomes completely different. And in fact, in product design, they won't buy it. So if you miss this opportunity to not talk, you may end up building something that actually doesn't even matter, or people ignore it in terms of what they're doing. And it's arguably, this is Dev Patnaik, who worked with Google at the beginning. He's now off doing his own thing. But he says the problem with this is not a lack of innovation, it's a lack of empathy. You're not asking the right questions to the right target markets at the right time. If you get this, you win the game downstream of design thinking. And this is why empathy is all up front. It's not downstream of the process. So the notion of the mom test, this is the book, is that people who you go to, some cases, when you're going to talk to them, they're not going to tell you the truth. You know, it's like you never want to say, my baby looks ugly, right? And by the way, in Thailand, okay, when I first got here, okay, people try to be nice, especially in Thailand. It's literally part of the culture. Something may be very wrong, but it's respect. They want to be in harmony with you. They're not going to tell you something very negative. They're going to, this is beautiful. Because it's a collective society. In the United States, it is not. It's more individual focus and so forth. And we'll talk about this in a minute. Therefore, the reality is, in certain cases, they're kind of lying. I call it white lying. Oh, that looks beautiful. And I'll show you the example of this in just a minute. But here's the deal. Bad data is worse than no data. You don't want to put bad data into the system up front with design thinking. Okay, so this is the example. I would definitely buy that. But let's look at this problem statement real quick. Okay, this is what people say. This is me. Mom, I have a business idea. Do you have 5 minutes? Oh, of course, dear. You like your iPad and use it a lot, huh? Sure, it's great, says Mom. Oh, would you buy a cookbook app? I love cookbooks. Sounds nice. Does it come with vegan recipes? Okay, you get the sense of the conversation. It's there and so forth. Now, let's see what she was really thinking, okay? Mom, I have a business idea. Do you have 5 minutes? Of course, dear. I'm proud of you, and I don't want to hurt your feelings. You like your iPad and use it a lot? Oh, it's great. It's used to check email on the sofa. She's not acknowledging, answering the question, but she's really thinking something differently. Would you buy a cookbook app? I love cookbooks. Sounds nice, but she says, well, I have plenty of cookbooks. I don't need a computer in my kitchen. It might get dirty, but hey, if my kid made it, I'll try the app. I never bought one. Do you need to enter a credit card for that? Let me try and change the subject. The chatter behind, the real story. So the question is, how do we overcome this? This is the art of empathy, is your interview questions. You have to know and be strategic about learning how to do this, all right? So here's how to do it right. You, Mom, when have you last used the iPad? For what? Have you ever used it in the kitchen? Have you ever bought an app? Which one? Why? For how much? Do you use your cookbooks? Is there anything you dislike about them? In other words, you must be strategic with the questions to surface frustrations, motivations, desires, gains and pains that they're looking at. And this is the art of effective empathy in the first phase. I'm now moving on to step 3. Arguably, probably the most powerful area that you have to do. Once you get the interviews, you got to come back and synthesize. You have to look for patterns. You have to look for, what are they really saying? What are they not saying? What's the point of view? What is the real problem that they're trying to present to us in the game? And this is done through collective teamwork, looking at interview maps, and empathy maps. There's all kinds of different tools you can do this, and there's apps to do this on top of it. But what I want to do is share with you that Burnett, who's part of the D School, says you must learn how to reframe your first assumption, how you test your hypothesis about what you think the problem is. Now, many of you, if you've been involved or been anywhere close to the Stanford D School, there's a real famous case, which I'm about to share with you, with really smart engineering students, and some were not engineering students, going to the D School. But it was in a program called Extreme Affordability. They're looking for solutions to markets that are not served, i.e. poor people, poor families in different countries and so forth. The notion was that in India and Nepal, there's a major problem of premature births, babies dying before they even get to the hospital. When they had the first problem statement, the entire focus was all clinical. What incubators do we need? How can we use the incubators to keep the babies alive? Because it's all about birth weight and body temperature, for the most part, with premature births. So there was a huge focus on, let's fix the incubator. What can we do to innovate the systems in and around the hospital with the incubator? What ended up happening, though, was they figured out they weren't even on the right track. So I'm going to show you the conversation that led them from, we're over here with this point of view about it's a doctor and technology problem, to, no, it's a baby problem with the mother at the point of birth, okay? So let's listen, and you're going to see a design thinking team reflect on how they got misled and what happened when they turned the corner to see why they had to shift. So listen carefully. It's a little bit, this is Indian, a little bit Indian team, so you have to listen for the language. Here we go.
Linus comes back with his wide-eyed wonder.
Basically came back and immediately started trying to disseminate everything I saw, all the video, all the pictures, to the whole team.
This was an after-class session that every team is kind of trying to come up with their POV.
Who are you designing for? Who's the user and what is their need? And then from that you form a point of view.
Then coming up with this point of view is the next big thing, where you kind of figure out who your user is and what their need is. And that's probably the place where you have to spend the most amount of time ever, because that pretty much sets the trend for what happens later on.
So there was a lot of storytelling, like space saturation, right? We've lots of pictures, video, just about Linus's experiences there.
And he was sharing some of what he found. So one of the interesting things was that there were actually a lot of donated incubators in the hospital, but they were all empty.
And then so the doctor tells him, yeah, actually most of these babies die out in rural areas. Right? So then they actually took a trip to one of these rural areas.
A woman who had given birth to a premature baby had taken the baby to a local village doctor, and the doctor said to her, I don't have the equipment necessary to care for this baby. You need to take her to the nearest city hospital so she can be placed in an incubator. But the woman can't get to that hospital in time. It's over 4 hours away, and as a result, the baby dies.
It's this desperate parent, okay, and we could feel the angst, okay, and we need to provide them some means of giving this baby a shot at living. We had to decide where we're going to design for. Are we going to design for the extreme remote areas? Are we going to design for something in between? So on the one hand, there's a clear need here for something that will work in rural areas. On the other hand, there's the engineer and me telling me, dude, that's going to be hard. We had mixed opinions on this, right? Some people on the team wanted to do the more remote setting. Others wanted to do something, and I was one of the others who was caught in two minds. Should we actually be doing something more tractable, right? That can actually be done by the end of the class. We were stuck here, and finally we get one of the TAs in this class, which again happens to be Sarah, who I consulted before the class. And she came up and said, we presented her with what we are facing, and she said, given a choice, I'd say go after the hard challenge. See, this is what puts the extreme in extreme affordability. Okay. He said, okay, fine. We'll see what we can do with the more rural setting. And so our POV became what it is, which is a desperate parent in a remote village, needs to give their dying baby a chance to survive. So that was a POV, and that was, I think, a point of definition where we did. So this means, okay, we're going to rethink the problem here.
Our point of view, the user is a desperate parent living in a remote village who needs the means to give her dying baby a chance to survive. So that's how we reframe the problem. It's no longer about the clinician, but about the parent.
We've also taken a step back from incubators, and we're saying that we're trying to give these babies a chance to survive.
That's where we defined the problem, and that's where we said, all right, we're going to try to do something, and we always, for this user and for this need, and we always we posted it on our sort of our whiteboard, and we'll always go back and say, okay, are we still addressing this point of view? You know, after every time we come up with a prototype and every time we do an iteration or something like that, are we still focusing, you know, are we still making sure that we're reaching this user and meeting their needs?
The point of view is staring at us from the board every day as we work.
It keeps us grounded, right? Instead of going everywhere, you just always go back and, you know, make sure that you're fighting the good fight type.
It's very powerful to have to have something written down, and that's constantly guiding us in this process.
We always try to bring it back to that POV. And so that's sort of why we came with the design and took it in sort of a different direction.
I'm Rahul Panikar. I'm a design thinker.
I'm Linus Liang, and I'm a design thinker.
I'm Nagmurthy, and I'm a design thinker.
I'm Jane Chen, and I'm a design thinker.
Okay, so a couple things. They go to the hospital. They think the problem is with the technology and the systems at the hospital with respect to getting the babies into the incubator, and they see what? Empty incubators. They're going, what's going on here? They had to ask the question, why? Once that started, the question was, what's behind this? It shifted and it ended up out. The point of view wasn't even at the hospital. As I said, it's the desperate parents in a remote village who really want the opportunity to save their baby. So once you get the point of view right, the problem is clear about what you're going to design around and what you're going to execute. You get the point of view wrong, in design thinking, you're going to iterate again for sure. Or in fact, you have to go all the way back to the beginning to start the process. So the bottom line is that this is actually up to date now as saved 300,000 babies. It's in the market. I think they're still in startup mode, though, by the way. They have seed money and venture money behind them, and I think even Dave Kelly's involved with this, et cetera. And I give you the link. But the key point here is I love from Einstein. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes executing. And this is very true in design thinking. If you can really understand that, as opposed, I got a solution in a technology, I think I got the solution and go, you're actually going to go slower. Because you're going to constantly come back and have to iterate to the point, did you get the problem statement? Did I get my needs right? It was the mother in the remote village that I had to focus on. And so they developed that little thermal baby blanket, which, by the way, had to be affordable to the mother and the family. It couldn't be an incubator. There was no way. And that's where you heard him say, somebody challenged him and said, you know, the easy way out is to go figure out the technology piece, but the harder part would be engineering that little blanket. And you can read, I've given you the links, you can go read about the end of the story. Next step, ideate and create. This is the fun step. We know our POV, now we got to come up with creative solutions, all right? This is what they call thinking out of the box for a lot of people. The key in this phase, my experience, my opinion, you need structured facilitation. You must have facilitators that know how to manage a group through a very creative process with discipline, but allow a lot of open conversation, disagreement, etc. Just to give you a sense, in the venture capital world, this is a real successful VC fund in Silicon Valley. I want you to just clearly see, out of 1,000 pitches from startups, 500 reviewed, they did 40 due diligence on the 500, there were 20 partner votes on the 40 due diligence, and 10 deals, okay? This is how hard it is to get money on great ideas. You got to convince a group that your idea is both powerful and executable, right? So that's about 1% success rate. So if you're in the startup world, that's why there's a few of you, 3%, 5%, but it's not easy. So the idea generation phase is actually a leading indicator of the effectiveness of an organization or team or entrepreneur in terms of will they be successful. Because if you just do the math, it says, I've got to have more ideas that ultimately boil down to the 1 or 2 that we're going to go execute. Now, a quick story. Genius is the discovery of the essence of the cause-effect relations of an unknown reality, the ability to see what is already hidden from sight, creating insight. Does anybody know how Bill Gates became I think he's the 3rd richest man now, because I think Jeff Bezos just took him over. And Zuckerberg just lost $150 trillion or something last week or something. But Gates was walking down a street as a college in Harvard. I think he was actually working at, I think, Xerox or something at the time. But he's walking down the street, and there's a magazine store on the street. And he sees the front page of Popular Mechanics, which is kind of a geeky new innovation magazine in the United States. And it was back in the 70s. I think it's still there. But what he sees is a prototype of the Atari computer. And he's looking at it. So this is the first time he's seen insight of something he's never seen before. He was working in a huge data center, the big, monolithic IBM data centers at the time. He sees this little screen of the Atari, but his fascination was, well, what program are they running it on? And this is a true story. It's the moment he's literally walking down the street, he sees the magazine, he stops, and there is that he became a billionaire at that moment of insight. And this has been researched by professors at Columbia and other places. The moment of strategic intuition. That's what you all hope for. That's what we hope for in our lives about everything, our family, our jobs, what we're doing and so forth. The second definition about intelligence. What Gates was trying to do was to hold 2 things in paradox. Is the code in the large data center going to work in this little mini computer that nobody had ever seen before? The personal computer wasn't even in existence. It was just a prototype, an idea. He had to be able to hold 2 things opposing at the same time and not lose his sanity. This is actually a quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald. I like it because it really talks about the paradox. The creativity is the ability to create a third unique idea out of the 2 opposed ideas. This is why in creative team sessions, you want disagreement. You want different perspectives. You want different opinions. You want to be challenging the edges of your thought and your perspectives to gain the opportunity to create a third option out of 2 opposing ideas. And it gets to the whole Eastern concept of yin and yang. There's where I have my... I can't tell you, I used to say, look, you have the brainstorming session, but where the action really happens, if you all know, it's here. It's when you're walking your dog and you're relaxing at night thinking, and then all of a sudden it hits you, right? How many of you had that experience? A lot of people tell me, oh, you know what, it's in the morning when I'm taking a shower. Because your conscious brain is not fully activated. You're kind of coming out of subconscious, unconscious dream state, and all of a sudden it's there because you're not thinking from that neofrontal cortex. It's just simply happening. So again, the notion of creativity is fun. It needs structured facilitation to get that idea generation out, to have effective ideas, to create the paradox that we need, and then you need to let it go. Let the higher mind and your abilities to actually do that. And by the way, I think it was Archimedes, right? Anybody here in physics? Archimedes was in a bathtub when he figured out Archimedes' law. Am I? Yeah. If you know physics, okay? Now, how do you select a design thinking team? I'm going to go through this very quickly because I get this question a lot. Not what's the process, because I really believe you got to put the right people on, right? Now, there's research. You can go get this, and you'll get the slide, but this is out of Christensen's book, which was a follow-up to his book on what's the DNA? What do you need in the team? What skills do I need in the team? His answer is you got to have these 5 things here, the 4 green and the blue, okay? And you can test this. We actually, at SEAC, we test this with our clients. They take an assessment. We find out on a 1 to 7 scale, self-assessment, where people think they are in terms of their skill set around this area. And then we look at using that as a way to combine who should be on what team for the design thinking projects. The real question is, do you want superstars? Well, this was actually answered by Procter & Gamble, who took on design thinking as a process of innovation. And it's interesting, what he described as the real superstars were people who spread their ideas to others, they borrow idea from others, and give them credit and help others succeed. To the point that he made the statement, cooperation and information sharing is not considered in compensation decisions. If people don't do it, they don't get promoted. He built a culture of innovation by truly understanding what it was required of managers and professionals who are in the innovation domain doing projects and so forth. Became well known for it, and Procter & Gamble has had amazing success. The other thing you want on teams is this. Somebody who's just crazy. Because they're not going to accept the norm. They're going to ask dumb questions, they're going to be crazy, and so forth. We call it the creative deviant. The other element of just thinking about how you select a team is you want people outside of your business. You know, I get executives say, we're going to do a technology thing and I want my IT department to be the design thinking team. I say, no. I said, well, give me the marketing team and another business to join your team. Because I'm going to create the intersection of different ideas to reformulate how creative the team can actually do. And again, there's research written on this and so forth about how to form cross-discipline teams for your projects. The last comment I'm going to make, and I am going to spend just a moment on this, because I'm telling you, I've been here 10 years now, and I have 25 minutes left. But I'm going to slow down on this one, because when I first got here, I couldn't believe it. I was a Westerner, born, baked in California, educated, you know, Stanford University, and I get here and I try to do my stuff from Stanford. Didn't work. In fact, I did my first strategic planning session. I had a bunch of executives. The GM was in the room. And in the United States, you can ask questions. What do you think the biggest problems are of the organization? You know, people just, and you grab it, you do the workshop. I went into the group to start my SWOT analysis. Strengths are okay. Everybody's talking about how good things are. Remember the mom test? We're in Thailand, Kreng chai. Chai Weaknesses. I asked, nobody said a thing. And by the way, this is the C level. Maybe C-1, the executive, and nobody's talking. And I'm like, I'm checking. What's going on here? And as a good facilitator, what you do is you say, let's take a break. I took a break. I go grab the assistant. She came right over me. I said, look, nobody's talking. What's going on? He said, oh, the boss is in the room. I said, that's why? I said, okay, well, go ask him to leave. She says, I know what you're talking about. I'm going to go do it and let him know. And she did the Thai way. Please, you know, and I gave her a little bit of instruction. He was fine with it. Come back after the break. He's gone. What are the weaknesses? I had to learn fast that what I was structured to learn as success in a Western European wouldn't work. You've got to adapt to the culture. Now, I'm going to shift this in a minute to say also the culture of Thailand needs to adapt to the innovation. The other way around. It has to work both ways. Because the notion of our national culture, our mindsets and values, respect, I love it. I don't want it to go away. I'm staying here because people are generally much more kind and sensitive as opposed to Donald Trump. I mean, it's a big deal difference, right? If people were doing what they do to Donald Trump here, they'd be, you know, you get the picture, right? That would not work, all right? So, Thailand, this is 2018. Innovation Index. The good news is you moved up from 57 to 44 in 1 year. I like it. Okay? The problem is you're still in the middle of the pack. Out of 120, I think this year was 126, okay? What's interesting, the research has been done on cultural differences between the top performers and the bottom performers. The good news is you're not in the bottom. You're in the middle for the opportunity for ascension. Now, if you just look at the differences in cultural biases between US and Thailand, I think you begin to see immediately why I had problems when I first got here. How people communicate are completely different. How they get evaluated, how you persuade, how you lead. In Thailand, it's much more top-down. The boss is telling and driving down. In the United States, you know, the boss, who cares? Now, you got a role, but you're pretty much insignificant, especially when it comes to innovation, because you probably don't know what the answer is. It's your people on the front line who are talking to the customers, all right? So there's many indices deciding how you trust. A big one, disagreeing. Thais in general do not like outward aggressive energy. And to my compatriots that are here, I always say, if you don't believe me, just go down Sukhumvit and tell me how many times you hear a horn honking on a car. Very little. Because there's a notion in Thailand, Mai Penrai, let it go. The traffic will clear up. Don't get anxious. It's just a fact of life. You don't need to get over concerned about. So there's a notion. In fact, I've seen drivers who honk, and then the Thais will look at you like, what? Stop, right? Affecting the collective harmony. Things will work themselves out, right? This kind of notion. So even deeply within our conflict and disagreeing, which is where we need to be, this is where the ideation, creativity comes. We need to be okay with disagreeing with the boss. But we have to have rules of engagement. We need structured facilitation so that I, as a team member, can have a powerful conversation with my boss. We don't want him out of the room. I said I want him in the room. He's part of the solution. But I had to get it opened up, right, with the team just to get it started. So the notion is, I'm just going to go quickly with you, in Thailand, if the top knows best, we have to understand there's going to be little information flow. In fact, I was with a CEO the other day of a bank here, and I actually did a prototype for him. I tested his system to use one of his services, and it was painful. And he said, tell me what happened. He says, why don't my people tell me about this? Really? You did? I said, yeah. And he was proud of it. He's very successful. He says, my people aren't telling me where the problems are. Now, in the United States and other countries, we call this the emperor has no clothes. Because if there's no upward flow of the problem set, the boss who needs to lead the team to innovation doesn't even know where to start. And he wants to know. He says, I want to know from my people. So a lot of this has to do with the notion then even of saving face, don't make an error, don't be rebellious, right? This is taught in the school system here. Pay attention to your, I think there's even a Thai concept that if you obey your parents, the dog won't bite you. You all know the Thai parable around that. Yeah. Face, you don't want to disappoint because we honor the collective. Versus the United States, the individual. Okay. I've been in arguments at Stanford that would literally it would look like a boxing match, but you know what? At the end of the day, we went out and had beers, and it was okay. But we came up with different solutions. In Thailand, it's different. We have to learn how to adapt to make sure that we can actually take risks and maintain harmony in a good way. Maintain. This is the power of the Confucian Buddhist culture that we need to acknowledge and honor in doing this. 80% of the success of design thinking is cultural, is mindset, it's leadership. The process is simple. You can get all these tools for free online. It's the adaptation with process and the mindsets that are critical. And most importantly, we've got to be allowing failure. And it's not bad. You don't lose face by making a failure in design thinking. It is a huge positive learning moment. You celebrate, in fact, you reward it. An entirely different notion of leadership, okay? And if you don't believe me, the notion, this is the Google project they've been running for years, just reported about what makes effective innovation teams. Number one issue, psychological safety. I did that research at least 10 years ago, same conclusion. If you don't have psychological safety, which means I can be protected, that my ideas will be shared without being shamed or blamed, I will give you more. I will take risks to let the team innovate effectively. So this is a very important one for people in design thinking teams. What are you doing to create more psychological safety, okay? There's one tool. I'm going to give it to you this because I learned this the hard way. But it's very simple. You must reframe your responses to people from yes, but to yes, and. How many of you seen this before? Just by a show of hands. Okay, so 50% of you, you can give me 20,000 baht each on the way out. This will change your life if you're a leader. Yes, and. When I say yes, but, what does the but say? Now in English, right? The but says, I don't agree with you. Get out of the way. Yes, and psychologically promotes what they call and both, either or. We can figure this out collaboratively in the creation. So words matter. Your psychological safety. Get this one. You can take a picture of this one. Just remember this on the slide deck. Don't forget yes and versus yes but. Right? The but is what actually creates a negative environment. One more comment. This is from Harvard. The best design teams, psychologically, they are cognitively diverse, which means I need introverts and I need extroverts. If I have all extroverts, I'm going to get an entirely different solution and problem set. Cognitive diversity means I need to round out the team in terms of their seeking style, and I must provide psychological safety from the leadership, the team facilitator, etc. Number 5, prototype and test. What we're trying to do here is to build something fast and tangible quickly. This is the power of design thinking. We're not going to create a real prototype concept. That comes later. In the early stages, we really want to develop what's called a low-res prototype, something of your idea put into physical form in one form or the other. And what you have to do is realize you have to start thinking with your hands, okay? I'm going to show you a workshop. I think it is, yeah. So this is a workshop we did with a bank. They're highly concerned about the disruption and potential complete dissolution of the ATM machine. Now, I think if you go to New York now, it's literally, there are prototypes out that they're eyeballed. You put your eyeball in, you put your finger down, it knows who you are, and you simply speak into it, voice command, it actually does voice recognition, and you say, I want $100, and it gives you $100. There's no more card, okay? Do you realize that this is a problem? Like, I carry, like, at least 5 cards. You got to take it out. Have you ever lost your credit card? Yeah, and none of you, and some of you don't sleep, right? Because you went, whoa, did somebody get it? Are they buying, stuff on my credit card? This is actually what's called friction. This is actually my MRT card, but it's called friction. Banks are trying to figure out how to get rid of your wallet. Forget carrying money. So what they had to do, in one day, they could only use the material in the room. This is less than 1 day. In fact, this was half a day. They had to model the ATM machine for the next 5 years. Using all the data, they had research, they had IT, they had all the cross-functional team in there. But these were prototypes done in a half day with people who had never, ever built a prototype before they walked into the workshop in Thailand. You get this? Learning this is critical. But when they started, it was like, because they're used to doing this, Excel spreadsheets and phones. That's the world that they live in. And then you say, build it out of spaghetti and aluminum foil and Post-it notes, okay? An entirely different creative process. This itself brings up creative energy. Ooh, we forgot about this in the problem statement, and how does this satisfy the need and so forth? So what they say in prototyping is design for the extremes and test for the mean. And I'm going to show you this in a minute. Now I'm going to show you a high-res prototype. This is different. Now I'm iterating through the design thinking process. We're getting better and better. We think we have a new business model. We've created, we think, the abstraction of a new business model, okay? Now what I'm going to show you is what's called a prototype, which is, this is high-res. This takes a little bit of time and a little bit of money, and what they're doing with this particular video is they're testing the market, okay? So let's see what they did, and this happens to be, by the way, in the insurance business, trying to figure out how to use technology more effectively.
No, it's just construction, that's all. No, I'm not driving.
Are you okay?
Yeah, you?
I'm good, I'm good.
Oh, no, not you. Listen, I'm gonna have to call my agent. I'm gonna get right back to you.
Mr. Burton, this is Insure Corp. We've received sensor data that indicates you were in an accident. Are you injured in any way?
I'm not injured, no.
Is anyone else injured?
I don't believe so.
Okay, where's my agent's number?
We have pinpointed your location and we are showing your car is not drivable. So we are dispatching an Uber car to take you to your destination.
That would be great.
I'm pressing 1. English. E-N-G-L-I, English.
May we give your coordinates to our appraiser drone to perform the appraisal?
Absolutely.
We have received the photos, assessed the damage, authorized the repair, selected a qualified repair facility, and have dispatched a tow truck to take your vehicle to that facility.
Perfect.
Yes, hi, this is... Yes, I'll hold.
We have looked up the other vehicle's insurance, transmitted the appropriate data to create the claim, and filed the California SR1 accident report. Can you confirm the information is correct on your phone, then hit the accept button?
I'll check it right now. Okay, all done.
Thank you. Your Uber car is arriving now.
Ah, I see it coming.
Accident, not payment. Accident.
Your tow truck should be there now. Don't forget to leave your keys in the vehicle. Thank you for using Insure Corp, powered by Pivotal Labs.
Okay, so what do you think? Less than 5 minutes, that's a business model prototype. You see all the, and by the way, it's just using current technology. Maybe a little bit of data structure they have to do at the right time. This isn't about inventing anything other than recombining known technology to solve problems and empathize. But that's what they call a high res, because that takes a little bit of time and creative energy. You have to shoot a video, right? But that's huge, because they can go to a large market test on YouTube and find out, would people do this and start actually deeper ethnographic research with the concept, because they haven't built the system yet. They haven't got the money yet to go build the real system that they're looking at. I'm going to go through these next two because I really do want to get to the 7th really quickly. Step 5 is you got to learn. You got to iterate. You're going to have to understand that failure is a positive event. And this is one, culturally speaking, you can't punish people. You can't have a sense of losing face if people are making mistakes, because that's what you want. Iteration is a learning experience. Failing a test is a major opportunity. And there's research that's been done, even in the US, many companies punish failure far more than they do success, and so people avoid it. So you have to have good leadership around design thinking. The notion is of the risk mindset is of experimentation. Move fast, go ugly, as I say. Go fast, go ugly, make mistakes, but just move fast, right? Just do it. You go to Stanford, this is all over the D school. Just do it. Don't talk about it, do it. Because in doing it, you actually learn. Project-based learning happens faster. Needless to say that if I'm truly in innovation up front, there's a lot more uncertainty. We really don't know where is the problem, what technology might fix, et cetera. Certainty comes down here when we're going to go ask the VC for money. with a business case. The notion is, again, from a leadership, you have to be persistent. The question is, how many times will I allow the team to fail? Was that a good one? You bet. And your executives are going to want to know the answer to that question, right? The short answer is, it depends, right? It depends on how good the process is. But in design thinking, it's the notion of iteration and going back and refiguring things out. But if you look at some of the major successful inventions, inventions and innovations in the market, this is the light bulb. 10,000 times he had to go through the experiment to come up with a huge, revolutionary, disruptive technology in the marketplace, right? So the short answer is, it's not one, it's not two, and it could be a lot depending on what you're doing. Persistence is critical. Don't stop. You might be at the very moment you have the insight in the hot tub. It's coming because the persistence is going to drive you to success. The last case, which some of you may or may not have gotten involved with, if you're still in startup and doing prototyping, eventually you must go ask for money, and people, and support. And you usually either do this in a corporate world, you go to your corporate planning, your innovation lab, or if you're in a startup, you go ask either a friend for some dough, or you go ask a VC, hey, give me some money. I think I can get to the next phase. So at Stanford, we have a whole course and assessment on this of entrepreneurial financing and so forth. I'm not going to go through this, but you have it. There's an opportunity assessment framework that you would look at as though you need to be prepared to have a convincing argument with a venture capitalist, okay? Because here's what the venture capitalist will ask you in general most of the time when you come up. It is this. Will the team survive the valley of death? Right here. Because you're going to burn cash, and will you turn the corner, and will we get to the success point? Maybe 2, maybe 3, who knows, whatever the time frame is that's been modeled for you to get through this process, right? So people with money are trying to figure out, will the team stay together to get to the success? It could be 1, 2, 3 years. I heard last night, one company in startup, they're in their 5th year, and they're still in the valley of death. Not a single profit dollar has been made yet, but they're still going because they're on it. They can feel the turning point happening. Simple rules. At the end, what you must be prepared to do. If you don't trust the team, and this is from the venture capitalist perspective, don't do it. If you don't know the market, don't do it. And this is the questions of the actual design thinking team. If you don't understand the technology, don't do it. So those are kind of 3 basic rules to assess. My basic perspective is it starts from the beginning, and you have to have a whole process, a holistic thinking, in order to manage the success of a design thinking project. There's a beginning and an end. The hard part is in the execution. And that's why I wrote the book. The hard part is here. That's where the value comes. This is the creative space. That's the creative space. This is much cheap, but this is where you spend all the money. This is where you spend huge amount of resource and time in order to drive your innovations. At SEAC, we have a 4-day boot camp. We actually use the 2 instructors here in our course. This is Jeremy and Perry. They run, they're co-adjunct professors at Stanford. We use that process in terms of actually talking about design thinking. And here's the deal, and I think I'm right on time. Your business requires a strategy. Your strategy requires innovation because of the things we've talked about with change. The innovation requires design thinking. And by the way, you can call it something else. The 27 different models, there's at least 7 of those that have nothing, they don't even say design thinking. They call it inverse lean innovation. Agile lean something, right? You can call it whatever, but have a framework to do your innovation. Your design thinking requires a new mindset, especially in Thailand, as we talked about with the cultural thing. Your mindset determines your future, and your future is what you learn and relearn now. We all have to learn new skills to keep up with the things that are coming in our world. Never stop learning, because life is never stop teaching. It's the power of understanding impermanence and so forth. So with that, I leave you with this notion. Innovation is love. If you love what you do and you love your customers' problems, you will innovate effectively. So I appreciate the time that we've had together. Please now take a photo. This is when you should take the photo. If you want the slides, get the QR code. Do they still do this in the US now? But this is in Thailand, this is the way you do it. You get online and and if you want, come join me on LinkedIn. I'm constantly posting stuff, sharing stuff with my network that's been with me now for about 20 years. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a great honor. Good luck in all that you do. Swati kap, kapun kap.
Thank you very much Mr. Willem Malik ค่ะเดี๋ยวอีกสักครู่หนึ่งนะคะเราก็จะมาเรียนรู้ประสบการณ์เรื่องของ MedTech Startup จากสหรัฐอเมริกากันนะคะโดยที่เราจะได้พบกับท่านวิทยากรต่างชาตินะคะก็คือมิสเตอร์เจมส์ดีโลซีดาสไซไนค่ะ Accelerator Powered by Techstar แล้วก็มิสเตอร์ไมเคิลเมลันนะคะ Founder and President Stasis Labs นะคะเดี๋ยวอีกสักครู่หนึ่งนะคะแล้วก็ในช่วงนี้ค่ะเราก็จะได้พบกับผู้ดำเนินรายการค่ะก็คือคุณวีนารัตน์เลาหะภัคกุลนะคะที่เจอกันในช่วงลงนามทำความเข้าใจเดี๋ยวอีกสักครู่หนึ่งก็จะได้พูดคุยกันทั้ง3ท่านเลยค่ะในระหว่างนี้ขออนุญาตแจ้งกันอีกสัก1รอบนะคะสำหรับหัวข้อในเรื่องของวันพรุ่งนี้คือ Startup Clinic นะคะเราก็จะมีหัวข้อ Investment Abroad Idea Validation is Market Size มีเรื่องของ Marketing นะคะแล้วก็ Business Lean Management ด้วยแล้วก็เดี๋ยวมาแจ้งกันอีกทีหนึ่งว่ารายละเอียดมีอะไรบ้างค่ะเอาละค่ะตอนนี้พร้อมแล้วนะคะสำหรับการเสวนาค่ะกับทั้ง2ท่านซึ่งเราก็ได้รับเกียรตินะคะจากมิสเตอร์เจมส์ดีลอนะคะ Cedar Sinai Accelerator Powered by Techstar แล้วก็มิสเตอร์ไมเคิลเมลอนค่ะ Founder President Stasis Labs นะคะ May I invite Mr. James Dilo and Mr. Michael Mellon on the stage ค่ะและดิฉันต้องขอยกเวทีนี้ให้กับคุณวีนารัตน์เลาหะภัคกุลอีกครั้งขอเสียงปรบมือให้กับทั้ง3ท่านด้วยค่ะ
สวัสดีค่ะเดี๋ยวเซสชันนี้ขออนุญาตพูดเป็นภาษาอังกฤษนะคะ so we have about 1 hour for this session and we'll be hearing from the accelerator and the startup and what are the challenges that they face in working together in making Stasis a success. But first of all, let us why are you laughing? So let us first of all get to know more about Cedar Sinai Accelerator powered by Techstars. So we'll hear from James first. He has a background to share with us about what Cedar Sinai Accelerator powered by Techstars does. And then after that, we'll listen to Michael about Stasis Labs. And then after that, I'll have a brief discussion. So let's start with James.
Sounds great. Thank you. Let's see here. So it's always a good sign when your slide deck shows up, so thank you for that. Good afternoon. My name is James Lohr. I'm the Vice President for Technology and Business Affairs at Cedar Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, California. I'd like to thank the conference organizers for inviting us and giving us the opportunity to participate and share some of our activities that I hope will be of interest to you. The theme of the conference, Power of Creativity and Innovation, and the topic for the next hour is entitled Sharing Experiences from a MedTech Accelerator in the United States. I will be covering this topic with my colleague Michael Malin, and we will start with a sort of overview of who Cedar Sinai is, and then I will sort of try to focus on the commitment that Cedar Sinai has had to creativity and innovation for its 100-year history, narrowing it down to its most recent sort of great idea, which is to create an accelerator program, which will then lay the foundation for Michael to give an overview of his company, the technology, and sort of what attracted him to the accelerator program. And then we'll, as we were saying at the beginning, we'll have a little conversation about what this all means and what we've learned and why we're so excited about this. Okay, so we have a lot of information to cover, and I'd like to just get started. So first, let me say a few words about my institution, Cedars-Sinai. Cedars-Sinai is the largest hospital in the Western United States. It's a nonprofit charity. It was founded in 1902, and we have 4 charitable missions. Basically, we exist to provide healthcare services. We pursue biomedical research. We educate the next generation of doctors and nurses, and we strive to improve the community. And in our view of the world, community is local and global. The next slide provides some basic facts and figures about Cedars-Sinai. I won't read all this to you, rather just simply note that it's a very busy place. The annual income of Cedars-Sinai is nearly $4 billion a year. So we have a lot going on. I had mentioned that one of Cedars-Sinai's priorities is biomedical research. As you can see from the statistics shown on this slide, Cedars-Sinai is very active in the research space. We spend over $170 million on research projects each year, and areas of particular strength and interest of ours are programs in cardiology, cancer, neurosurgery, digestive diseases, and regenerative medicine, which is the use of stem cells in clinical applications. So, from the various research programs, many new inventions are made. Creating new inventions, however, are just one part of the story. It's essential to find a way to bring these new discoveries to the market so that patients can actually benefit from the new treatments, new drugs, new diagnostics. This process of moving inventions from the laboratory into the real world is called technology transfer. So basically, tech transfer is the process of identifying, capturing new ideas, evaluating them for the market, and securing intellectual property protection, ultimately to commercialize the new products and services. So this slide here does a good job of providing an overview of the tech transfer program at Cedars-Sinai, and I'd like to highlight a few things. There's a lot of information on this slide. We have over 400 technologies in our intellectual property portfolio. 30% of the portfolio is licensed and creating income. Another thing to note is the diversity of the portfolio. Therapeutics, devices, diagnostics, tools, algorithms, and software. And I want you to keep in mind the diagnostic element, which is about a quarter of the technology. I have a comment to make on that later in the presentation. This past fiscal year, we received nearly 80 new invention disclosures from our faculty, and we bring in over $30 million in revenue from approximately 40 licenses to our technologies. So this is really focused on taking technologies out of our lab, but in addition to licensing them to companies that exist, Cedars-Sinai has also been creating new companies. And so this gives you a snapshot of over the past 5 years, we've created 15 new companies. And since they're new companies, they really don't have a lot of cash. So instead of taking royalties at the beginning, we take equity in the company. And this past month, we did a valuation of the portfolio, and we have about $85 million worth of equity value in these companies. So again, it shows the point of helping new technologies go into the real world can have immense value. There's one unique feature of our tech transfer program that I think is worth mentioning here. It's our international program. The underlying premise is that doing this stuff is very difficult, and doing it on your own can be very lonely and very challenging. So what we try to do is partner with people who have the same challenges, who are trying to fight the same fights as we do. And so international outreach for us has been a formal part of the program for the last 20 years or so. And since that time, we've built a network of nearly 50 leading hospitals and research institutes around the world. The purpose behind these collaborations are sort of multifold, but basically it's to learn about how technologies are marketed in other regions, to help other academic institutions market into the United States, find new investment opportunities, and really just learn about each other, because you can always sort of improve what you're doing back home by seeing what other people are doing that works for them. So remember I mentioned the diagnostic portfolio. So our tech transfer office had a huge amount of technologies in our portfolio that really wasn't going anywhere, because a lot of the current industry partners aren't interested in esoteric biomarkers or new diagnostics that aren't ready for the market. But we felt that as a part of our charitable mission of bringing technologies into the real world, we really wanted to try to do something with all these assets instead of just see them die on our portfolio. So what we did was, sadly, our vision of taking these technologies into the real world ran into reality. It's really expensive, it's really difficult, you need a lot of expertise in areas that we didn't have. So what we did was look to a partner that we had in Singapore, A-STAR, which is a agency of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, which promotes research and development activities. And they happen to create a diagnostic hub, which is a sort of state-of-the-art facilities and expertise in developing diagnostic assets. And they were looking for people with diagnostic assets to develop. So we had a lot of what they needed, and they had a lot of what we needed. So basically, we're working together with A-STAR on creating new diagnostic tests that will be ready for the market as a part of a 10-year, 5-product partnership. So, you must be wondering, when is he going to talk about the accelerator? Well, this is the point where I'm going to do that. So that was a quick look at Cedars-Sinai and our sort of 100-year commitment to creativity and innovation. But that's sort of a traditional thing. That's a part of who we are. But this final episode of my story is going to be the new program that complements that commitment and enhances our efforts to harness technology to help us be more efficient, help lower costs, and improve the patient experience. And the program is the Cedars-Sinai Accelerator. So the accelerator was established 3 years ago, so it's very young. And while our traditional tech transfer program looks inwardly at new inventions coming out of our own research labs, the accelerator specifically seeks to engage with entrepreneurs and startup companies that are outside of Cedars-Sinai. Because as you know, there's no shortage of no shortage of problems in healthcare, and working together with smart people from outside our organization can bring fresh ideas and new energy. So quickly, I want to mention how we use the word accelerator. For us, the word accelerator is in its literal meaning. It's to make something faster. In an incubator is where an idea is taken from a sketch on a piece of paper to an actual product or service, and that's really at that point when it's ready to be brought to the market, when you might look at a accelerator program to bring it into reality. So the Startup Accelerator at Cedars-Sinai is, I can't say a model of every accelerator you'll run into. There's no 2 accelerator programs I've run into that are alike. Ours is an intensive 3-month boot camp program. It's very focused on mentorship to provide feedback on the market fit, business models, a lot of the things that we just heard William talk about as a part of understanding who your user is, understanding what their problem is, as opposed to providing them with a solution that you came up with without considering their needs or their hopes and dreams. In addition to time dedicated to preparing the company's founders for determining their product, we also spend a lot of time on how to determine the amount of money you need and how to actually raise that money. So since the program was established, we've had 3 classes and a total of 28 companies graduating from the program. In fact, 3 weeks ago, our 4th class just started. The financial structure of each participant company in the program has basic features. It's basically, to participate, each company provides a small percentage of its common stock, approximately 6%. Cedars-Sinai provides each company with $25,000 to help offset the costs incurred in the 3-month residency in Los Angeles. Cedars-Sinai also provides each company with about $100,000 in the form of a convertible note, so that when the company has its first raise of capital, that converts into equity in the company as well. And while the vast majority of our first class came from the Los Angeles area, we were really quite surprised and pleased to see that the current classes are coming from all over the United States and beyond. We receive over 400 applications for the program, and we choose 10 to join the class. Applications have been coming from a broader range around the world. Now, people are always asking me if the program is successful, and I have to say, since it's only 3 years old, I don't know. It's a bit too soon to say it's a success or not. We can, however, look at how the companies who come through the program are doing. So this slide will show how the companies have been doing in raising money, which is a traditional way of gauging success. The light green color represents money that had been raised before the program, and then the darker green provides an indication of how much money the company has raised post-program. So to date, 13 companies have raised a total of $43 million post-program. In total, the 25 active companies have raised a total of $82 million in the pre and post program. Another way of looking at success is to track the growth of employees. So many of the companies grew rapidly as a result of the traction they gained from the accelerator program, and overall the active companies have hired 188 new employees after they started the program. And of course, everybody likes to see themselves in the media, and our program has generated a lot of interesting attention in the media, and we're very pleased with that as a way to highlight the efforts that we're doing in this new undertaking. Another aspect that we believe is important is the growing reputation of the program has led to valuable conversations and connections throughout the world with thought leaders who are struggling and inspiring everyone in the same way as we hope our program can inspire others. So, with that, let me thank you for your kind attention. That was a large amount of material to cover, but my hope is that you now have the context to Michael's talk and then our ultimate conversation about the actual program, the nuts and bolts, and what we think is really the most important message is what can we learn here that we think has value and potential applicability in Thailand. So, Michael, stage is yours.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you all for being here. Really appreciate the host for having us. My name is Michael Malin, founder and president of Stasis Labs. We're a smart patient monitoring company. I fundamentally believe that the way that we're delivering care in hospitals and around the world is broken. It's a reactive care model that is not efficient for the aging population around the world. Now, a proactive care model is what I'm a proponent of. So let me kind of paint an example for you of the differences. A reactive care model is a patient is having a cardiac arrest. The nurses and the doctors run to the bedside to shock them to try to bring them back to life. A proactive care model is where you anticipate that the patient is going to crash and intervene before you even need to save them. So we started our company based on this belief, built a hardware, software, cloud infrastructure, and artificial intelligence to be able to predict patient events in advance and allow doctors and nurses to be able to go and actually help. We started this off in India. We saw a large opportunity in the country, and my co-founder was from there, and we had some relationships to get up and going. Now, as we started building the company more and more, we realized that this need for moving healthcare into a more proactive model was really a global need. And so since then, we've been able to really try to understand how the needs of customers, whether it be in India, the US, or in other countries, can be met to be doing this. As part of that process, we went through the accelerator in the first class back in 2016. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, you can do a Create an Innovation Accelerator in a place like Cedars-Sinai because there's a lot of money. They're a hospital for Hollywood celebrities. They have tons of it, and so they can throw it at innovation. And I'm here to try to say that I don't believe that. I actually think that a place like Thailand is and Bangkok in particular, is a perfect place to be able to create the kind of innovation for global scale. And the reason that I think that is this concept of reverse innovation. Reverse innovation is where you have limited infrastructure, limited kind of ability to be able to pay for a product, and you have to design it with that minimal kind of availability, and then you can start working with those with more and more resources to build a product that works for, say, a medical center. And so to give my product as an example, we started working with clinics in rural India and trying to really understand with limited electricity, with no Wi-Fi, with a lot of humidity and dust, low trained staff, how do we build a system that can deliver this proactive care that I'm speaking of? Now, as we went through this process and really understanding that, then we went and we were working with medical centers, working with some of the leading physicians in using all of the newest technology and trying to understand, what do you like about your current technology? What are the pain points? And really understanding the gaps from those that are using the absolute most bleeding edge technology. And the beauty with this model of reverse innovation is that since we started in a place where they had very little resources, where we had to be very creative in how we designed a very new age product and a business model that fit, very limited capital availability. They had almost no working capital, and they didn't have the credit required to be able to get loans from banks. How do you build an innovative business model that still fits this? And so as a result of that, what we were able to do is build something that worked both for rural clinics all the way up to top medical centers, i.e. rural India, urban US, and the entire gradient of everything in between. Now, bringing it back to Bangkok, why do I say I believe that you guys are in a perfect place to be able to use this same philosophy, whether this be for healthcare, agriculture, education, etc., is the fact that you have areas of most of Thailand that do have pretty limited access to resources. So for example, clinics in rural Thailand. Now you also have some of the top medical tourism hospitals here in the world. And so when you take the same approach that we did of understanding how to build a product and business model of the limitations of the rural areas and the robustness of the urban environment, you've suddenly been able to build something that then can scale globally. And so that's why I believe that you guys have a great opportunity right here in your own backyards to be able to build something for global scale. Now, when I think about that, there's a few things that need to change. And I think this is actually tapping a little bit into William's presentation for us, but a lot of it comes down to mindset. And so when you think about mindset, there's a few things that immediately come to mind that I believe if you change very slightly, you'll suddenly realize that you have everything, all the resources available. It's just really how you put them together. And so one of them is this concept of fearing failure, right? You can't feel failure. In fact, you actually often will learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. And so it's slowly over a period of time celebrating and recognizing your failures, doing kind of a retrospective. So looking back over what are the different things you did and what did and didn't work, and learn from those, reinforce those. And that's, I think, a very key part of being able to do that. Another one is believing in yourselves. This is actually, I think, one of the most important ones, is if you think you can only build something for your local community, then that's what you're going to do. If you think you're going to be able to build something for your country, then that's what you're going to do. But if you think that you're putting the pieces together from the start to build something globally, then that is what you're going to do. You're really your own biggest limitation. And so I encourage all of you, when you're thinking about how do I solve the problems that I'm seeing, don't limit yourself, because you really can do anything. At the same time, you don't want to think, oh, I see this massive problem. Say, people don't have access to food. Well, that's a really, really, really large problem. And when you start unpacking that, there's so many problems that make up that big problem. And so if you try to figure out how to solve that, you may get so overwhelmed that you don't even know where to start. And so as a part of that process, you want to think, well, what is a very small problem that will make a tiny little dent in solving that? And the beauty of being able to create a kind of community of innovation like what is being seen here today is that you get tons and tons of smart people thinking in different ways with different perspective of how to solve different small parts of the problem. And when you get all of those innovators together working on solutions to their own problems that they've identified, now suddenly the solution gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And ultimately over time, as you're working on that and you solve maybe one small problem, then you see another problem nearby that, or many of those, and you can kind of start working until ultimately, together as a community and as a world, we've been able to solve some of the largest problems that are presenting us as a species. And so I guess really I'll end in saying, before we go into our discussion here, don't fear failure. Really believe in yourselves, and don't think that limitations of resources is a limitation. It actually can be a strength if you really kind of open your mind to that. So thank you.
Thank you. So I'm curious, James, for the 3-month program, what do you actually do with all the companies or the startups that actually join the program?
Yeah, that's the question all the applicants ask as well. So what am I going to do there for 3 months? The most important component, I would say, is the access to world-class physicians, nurses on the floor, how the billing office bills patients, anything that a company needs to understand in order to be successful in a healthcare space. You don't have to make wild guesses about how you're going to get reimbursed. You don't have to make guesses about what happens in the operating room. You don't have to guess what happens on the hospital floor. You get to engage with the individuals who do this, and they can tell you, I won't buy that. This won't work for me. This is the wrong color. This needs to go here. That's powerful.
So you will have applicants applying, and then you'll pick. So
Yes.
what is the criteria?
In fact, you definitely don't want me picking any of the companies. One of the things we learned was having the people with the problem, a la William, is important because when we're looking at applications, the exciting technology is there, but we want the chief nursing officer to stand up on her chair and say, that's a company I want to work with. They're doing something I would love. Because if you show up with the, I think this is neat, nurses should love it, no nurse in their right mind is going to really embrace it because I'm not a nurse, I don't understand what they're doing. So we bring in the actual potential users, the people who are going to write contracts and buy that service or product, come in and pick those 10 companies.
Can Thai startups apply?
Yes, in fact, we've had a lot of applicants growing from the Southeast Asian community, and we're waiting for the right connection between our clinicians to spark a reason for them to come and join the program.
Right. So for Stasis, how do you actually, what did you actually learn from the program, the 3-month program?
I don't think we have enough time to address all of that. No, thinking about some of the most important parts. So as I was mentioning, it started off working with hospitals over in India, right? And so we'd spent, before we ever wrote our first line of code or designed our first circuit, we spent about 2.5 years interviewing thousands of hospital administrators, doctors, nurses, patients, and their family members in India about the issues around patient monitoring. Which was kind of an idea that we had, which is there's all these patients in the hospital where nurses are manually walking around, gathering different vital signs, and then all of a sudden patients are slipping right in the hospital and dying, and no one knows. And so this is a problem that we really understood well in India, and we'd found a solution for. And we kept hearing from people in places like Cedars and UCLA and other academics in our backyard, well, hey, this is a problem that we have as well. But we didn't really understand that. And so that's a long way of answering your question, but essentially we spent the 3 months interviewing every single person that we could get a meeting with at Cedars, as well as other industry leaders that came into the program. And the reason being is that we asked a lot of open-ended questions to really understand their perspective of the problem. And I stress perspective because I think that's really important, is that when you talk to someone, whether it's an administrator who's on the high level kind of looking at the 5-year strategy, or if it's someone on the ground who is just there, day to day doing the paycheck, they're going to have different perspectives of the same problem. And if you interview thousands of people and talk about this iterating over and over, you can understand the complete picture of the problem, and then you can actually understand how to really solve that. And so we spent the 3 months really trying to understand the perspective of the problem from a US audience.
But why do you want to focus in medtech in the first place and not in some other areas?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to that. And let's see. So pretty much my entire life, every member of my family had been involved in healthcare in some way. So my mom was a nurse, spent a lot of time with families in the home when their loved one was passing away. And my father worked a lot with the US government around helping with kind of public health and big kind of health issues. And pretty much every other family member had been involved in some other facet of healthcare. And so when I was in grade school, very young, I became really obsessed with how technology was evolving and how at the intersection of technology and medicine, we could kind of find new solutions. And so as I got into my high school days, I kind of I guess I had a bit of this aha moment where I realized technology was accelerating at a pace so rapidly that in the next 10 years, with the connectivity of the world, with the mass consumerization of mobile technology, and with kind of algorithms being developed that were kind of going into what people are kind of now calling artificial intelligence and other predictive analytics, we suddenly had this perfect storm of things that could really solve problems in healthcare in an efficient way that before I don't think technology was quite ready. And so I wanted to work on that.
Do you think it's a prerequisite as well for anyone who wants to do a startup to be really involved or have some kind of connection with that startup? Or can we just jump into any fields that we see there are pain points in and then just start a business?
My answer is I think it depends a little bit, honestly. I think the single most important thing if you're going to start a company is that you have to be really, really, really passionate about it. You have to really care. And as part of the process of understanding the problem that you're solving, need to understand the problem so well that you almost have this kind of like unique insight or like really kind of clear understanding of how to solve that. So I think that if you are really passionate about something, I think some of the coolest companies that I know were born out of a personal experience, and that's why they became so incredibly emotionally attached to it. And so you may not have the expertise, but if you're really passionate about it, you're going to seek out to learn. And so I don't think you have to have a background, but you definitely have to have something that draws you to it on an emotional level.
And can I supplement what Michael was saying? One of the companies that came into the accelerator actually was very successful in a sort of a area working with the National Security Agency and the Central Intelligence Agency in the US, and they woke up every morning going, I don't feel good about what I'm using my life for, and they felt that if they could take what they're doing, which was a very sort of powerful engine of analytics for analyzing data, if we can do this somewhere else and do things that help people, we would feel better about ourselves. So they came to the accelerator and they said, healthcare has a lot of problems. We have this great solution. Can we figure out by talking to clinicians what we might be able to do with this thing? And so they completely got out of the business of working with the United States government and through the program identified a really big problem, which is helping find patients who can qualify for clinical trials out of the electronic health record that isn't really set up to do that kind of searching. So their engine was able to go in and identify people who could benefit from clinical trials that they didn't even know about, that their doctors didn't even know about. So they're feeling, to answer your question of can you just sort of wake up and decide, I want to get into healthcare, I have no reason why. There's no shortage of problems in healthcare. There's just so much, and technology has so much potential to make a difference. These kind of programs, I think, can help connect you with people who can tell you how your great idea might be an amazing solution that nobody's thought of.
In the graph that you showed us just now, with all the startups that actually learn with your program, how are they all doing today?
Yeah, it's funny. The section of the presentation I took out was the answer to that question because I was like, oh, there's a lot of information here. But basically, we look at our companies in three ways. There's a sort of a success curve for startups, and there's failed or didn't make the connection to the market. There's ones who are still finding their place, their product fit in the market, and then those who are gaining traction. So when we look at the curve in that way, 3 of the companies from the program of the 28 have gone out of business who basically learned that their idea for healthcare wasn't going to work. It wasn't a good business model. So they were able to, and one of the things we talk about is helping people fail faster. So we help them not spend all their money on a product or service that in the healthcare space they'd never be able to make a business out of. So they were able to pivot, do something else, and got out of healthcare, which is in a way a failure from the program because it's not in the healthcare space, but they were able to learn about the space in a way that they could make it more intelligent decisions. In the center space, I want to say a good half to 2/3 of the companies are still active, still in the mix, trying to find where their product might work. And so the 3-month program is 3 months, and at the end of the day, that's not a lot. But once you're in the program, it's not that you hit day 90 and then we never want to talk to you again. There's still ongoing access in those networks that you've developed. And then the last, I'd say about 1/3 or so of the companies have actually become really powerful and really successful. And in a world where startups, basically 1 out of 10 is alive after 2 years, our program is showing that we can take a good third and be alive after 2 years. We think is a very good indicator that what we're helping companies learn is powerful and valuable.
So for the companies that actually failed, why? Why did they fail?
Yes, for instance, one of the companies was a really successful B2C business where they were going to customers in post-discharge and providing for assistance around the house, for like helping buy groceries, help get dressed in the morning, not really nursing care, but just sort of after you get out of the hospital, sometimes you need that little extra help. So they found out that growing our business door to door is a little bit slow, and we will go to the source of patients, which is a hospital. So they came to the program because they said, then we can be a B2B, we'll help the hospital create a business line that provides their patients who are discharged with this missing piece of the healthcare system. What they found was a lot of business, but they couldn't hire enough people, they couldn't make enough money, there was not enough margin there, so the business model was going to collapse. If they had success, they'd go out of business because they couldn't, they'd pay more for their personnel than they would actually get back in reimbursement because the healthcare system doesn't pay for that. So for them, what they did was they stopped doing that business and they became, I think, herbal medicine, like herbal teas and spices. So now they're very successful just in a whole different business. And we got a letter from their board of directors saying, thank you so much for helping us find out that the future wasn't a good mix for what we were doing.
So for those that actually became successful, what made them successful?
I think, and I'd be interested to hear what Michael has to say, for us, I think it's where you have that really amazing connectivity between the vision of what the entrepreneur has and the relevance and the sort of need and excitement of the clinician. So when the clinicians really hear the message and see the potential and then they work together to make it actually successful in the complicated healthcare space.
So is that what happened? You made clinicians excited with your idea?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I'd say that when I look at ourselves, but also the other companies that I think have been the most successful, I think it's really distilled down to there's a very clear problem, and it's a large one, and their solution really fits well with that problem, and they have the team, and they've been able to attract the team to really execute on that. So there's nothing too crazy that I'm disclosing here, but really they were able to find, product market fit and in a team market, team product fit as well. So it's kind of like those 3 pieces all came together really well.
And another thing that I think really is the nature of human beings. So when clinicians get excited about a new product, a new entrepreneur, a company that's really inspiring them to improve what they're doing, they're going to pick up the phone and brag about it and put connections out to their network at other institutions. And so that gives these companies such a leg up. When you go into any business to try to sell something, you have to figure out who to talk to. And there's this like big, gigantic, mysterious company, and having another doctor or nurse or administrator pick up the phone and connect you with somebody with that calling card of Cedars-Sinai thinks these guys are the real deal, really worth your time to talk to them. It's really made a big difference for just sort of getting that momentum.
I mean, extracting that a step farther, that would be applicable to anyone here looking at starting a company, regardless of industry or what you're doing. It's this whole concept of word of mouth, right? And so if you look at your first few users or customers, there's a difference there, but the first few people that have bought and are using your product and they really love it and it's working and it's filling a need for them, then that is the seed of success. And so if you go and you try to get a bunch of people using your product and it doesn't work, and you're like, oh, well, this is a sales process issue or some other issue or business model issue. No, it's not filling the need of the person you're selling it to. There's some kind of mismatch. And so rather than trying to start scaling that up or throwing a bunch of money at that, take a step back and really understand what can I do to get the first few people to absolutely be obsessed, to really, really love it, and that's then the seed to success. And so I guess actually going back to your question before, I think what everyone that has been really successful in the program, but then just more broadly speaking, all my friends who have started companies, those that have succeeded have been able to find that absolute customer obsession. And then you take on that, and then it's all about executing that customer obsession to scale. But I mean, word of mouth is a very sticky kind of marketing technique. You can pay for all the other ways of scaling, but if you have people that absolutely love you, they're going to be able to get your business to help you grow a heck of a lot faster than trying any other technique.
So for Stasis Labs, let's say I'm a patient. What does it do for me from my perspective?
Yeah.
Now that you get all your clinicians excited, okay, that it actually will be able to fulfill some pain points. Yeah. So for the patient, what does it do?
So when you're in a hospital, you're scared, right? You're vulnerable, you're not feeling well, and you've entrusted quite literally your life in the clinical team, the nurse, the doctor, and others to help you. And when you look at the hospitals today, a good portion of the hospital, the team is occasionally walking around and checking on you every 2, 4, 6 hours, unless you're in the intensive care unit. Then there's someone always there. And our whole idea is, can we take modern technology and some new innovative processes to take the quality of care you're receiving in the ICU and bring it to the entire rest of the hospital? And so why you as a patient would care about that is that through the use of our technology, we have a machine that is at least always watching you, and if there's ever an issue, then your entire clinical team knows about it immediately and can come and help. So rather than someone occasionally checking on you, there's a kind of proactive system that's going to alert them if there's ever an issue. And we also have a display right there at the bedside that just uses simple icons and colors. So kind of how I like to think about it is you could be a 5-year-old sitting there next to your grandfather and you see everything is green and you understand, okay, it's okay. There's no numbers or waveforms, other things that require a medical education to understand what's going on. We've really simplified it for the patient and their families so that they can immediately understand, hey, doctor says everything is okay. I don't need to worry about it. I'm already worrying about enough things, myself as a patient or my loved ones in the hospital. So it's really about kind of giving peace of mind.
So now apart from India and the US, where else did you actually move from Stasis Labs into?
Well, we're still pretty young, so we're only in the US and India right now. Although they're both a lot of, they're pretty big markets, right? So there's been a lot. I mean, just focusing on more than one country already as a small company has been a pretty broad focus. Our kind of how we've thought about it is that India is kind of representative of one type of market where there's a lot more limited resources, both in terms of infrastructure and capital. And then the US is kind of at the other end of the spectrum where there's a lot of resources and a lot of capital, although incredibly inefficient because of that, right? And so we've kind of seen those two different beds as the different types of markets that are representative of what we're trying to sell to. And so by creating a company that is understanding of both sides of the spectrum, then we can use those as launch points to be able to really go globally, and doing so through working with partners to help us.
Talking about healthcare, I think we all agree that there are so many areas that we can improve on. What would be the next big field or some of the big ideas in this healthcare?
Yeah, to tell you the truth, there's no shortage of big ideas. I think those are the fruit of like movies and the television shows that are talking about the future of medicine, and you know they're going to have this thing that you go like this, and oh, you have this, and here, take this pill, and you're going to be fine. But I think the nature of healthcare in reality is not about so much big ideas. Those are going to happen when they happen. In a way, we look to universities and our technology transfer programs to be looking for those big ideas. What an accelerator program and what I think is relevant every day of every week is little problems, little improvements, things that we do because that's the way we do them. And someone from the outside can say, well, you know, you can be more efficient, it can cost less, and the patient outcome will be better if you did these simple things with technology. Harnessing technology, say, from an Uber company to say, well, can't you use that kind of model to help get people who are not in emergent care in needing an ambulance to take them to the hospital, have it with a system where you get people to the hospital in a safe, efficient manner so that you don't have sick people having a heart attack like behind the wheel of a car driving themselves to the hospital. So those are the kind of things we want people to do, is look around themselves, look at technology and wonder, how can this make healthcare better? Big ideas I don't think are going to go away, but they're certainly not going to solve all the real problems of being in healthcare. Michael?
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I would extract that out a bit, and I'm obviously biased here because of what I said earlier, but kind of what I was talking about, this whole idea of moving from a reactive to a proactive care model. And in many ways, that kind of is an umbrella that encompasses a lot of different problems. And I personally think that it's a huge idea, and I'm not trying to say that I'm the only one that can solve this. It requires our entire world to really solve this. But if we want to continue to provide more and more efficient and quality of care, especially as our population is getting older and older, we need to figure out ways of being able to more proactively or preventatively attack issues rather than trying to fix them when it's become a really big issue. So for example, it's the kind of has a bit of a negative connotation, at least in the US, but it's like, do you give someone a bandage or do you give someone like a vitamin, right? So do you help fix the problem before it's a problem, or do you fix the problem once it's been a really big problem? And you can unpack that to a lot, but I really think that's a really big idea because I don't know how it is here, but in the US, there's 10,000 people every single day that turn 65. And I know that in Thailand and in every country around the world, there's more and more elderly people. I kind of like to think, I've heard this term coined before, the silver tsunami. There's a lot of people getting old that are going to need care. So as that is happening, how are we going to respond? Are we going to keep throwing more money at it, or are we going to figure out how to be more efficient? And so I think that efficiency while maintaining higher and higher quality is really the big idea.
In terms of business as a startup, what's the biggest challenge that you faced so far? A couple, fine.
No, I think there's always a lot you could say, but it's really around attracting the best team, hiring people. Because if you find the right team, I think anything's possible. So finding the right people to come together to be able to solve the problem that you're working on, and as you keep growing, getting the best people, especially in a competitive marketplace where you're trying to hire the best talent, that's really challenging. I think if you really understand the problem and you have a solution that works for that, and you've been able to attract in some initial core people, all your other problems around being able to scale, around getting money, around all these other things that people often talk about with startups, I think all of those are solvable when you have a really good core team, and then you can grow on that.
And it's a sort of a corollary to what you said, Michael. When we're in the accelerator program looking at these 400 applications, we have 5 things that we look for. Team, 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 product. Because you can have an amazing product that lousy teams can like screw up. but you can have amazing people do amazing things with a product that just isn't possible otherwise. So to your point about hiring the people, it's really a challenge.
How do you know if you have hired the right people? You got to test it out somehow, yeah?
If you figure that one out, let me know. Everyone in the world wants to know that one. You make a lot of
let's make a business around that.
you make a lot of mistakes in the process, right? No, I mean, I honestly don't have a great answer. I mean, the best way that we've thought about really hiring the best people is we take our time. We kind of really think through the process. We trust our intuition or trust our gut in kind of the process, and we pay close attention to whether it's working or not and why it's working or not. And if it's not, then that person's probably not going to get better, and there's no point kicking the can down the road. So got to let them go and kind of keep going. So it's being diligent.
And money or financing is not a problem for you at all?
I didn't say that. It's not the biggest problem. No, it's realistically not been that hard for us. We're very fortunate in that sense. I think it's once again, we really understood the problem, and we built a solution based on that, and we continue to revisit it. And it's built on this belief of being able to accelerate medicine towards proactive care, and I think people are really attracted by that idea. And so we've been able to pitch that in a way that has been able to attract a lot of capital.
So there's, along the way, there's not even a point where you said, we might not be able to do this.
It depends on the day, or when in the day. I mean, still today, I wake up and I think, oh, this is about to be super successful, and then 2 minutes later, I'm like, wow, there's no way this is going to succeed. So that hasn't gone away at all.
So you got to persevere somehow.
Absolutely, and that's where passion comes in.
What would be your advice for all startups?
I think one of the biggest ones, and I touched about it a little bit at the beginning, but really believe in yourself. The perspective, or what you think you can do will be the reality. You're kind of your own limit. And so if you really feel strongly about something, pursue it. And if you fail, then that's okay, because you've learned a lot in the process and you've built more and more relationships, and you're going to be able to succeed in the next one. So keep persevering on what you're really passionate about, and don't limit yourself. Conquer the world.
James?
Yeah, I'd say sort of like this, but it's really, don't keep your dreams a secret. You want to throw your dreams out there, get as many people as possible, critiquing it, shooting them down, and with that, you will make your dream come true. Keeping your dream to yourself, nobody's going to know about it, nobody's going to buy it, nobody's going to give you any money to make it. So, dream big and do it. Just sort of like, if I can steal your shirt for a second, it's just sort of, you have to do what you are dreaming of, or it's not going to get done.
All right.
Yeah, let's build the world that we want to see together.
All right. Thank you very much, James and Michael. Thank you.
ค่ะขอบคุณทั้ง3ท่าน